Hello, I'm Emily. I've always believed that small acts of kindness can change lives, that a simple gesture, like a warm smile or a heartfelt note, can make someone's day brighter. I remember one afternoon when I was feeling down, and my grandmother surprised me with a handmade card filled with drawings and words that made me feel truly seen. That moment taught me that love isn't about grand gestures. It's about the little things that come from the heart. It's those small acts of thoughtfulness that remind us we're not alone, that someone cares deeply about us, even in the quietest ways. For as long as I can remember, I've carried that belief with me. It's what fuels my desire to make others feel loved, appreciated, and connected. Recently, I found myself yearning for a way to bring my family closer again. Life had gotten so busy, and over the years we had drifted apart, caught up in our own routines and distractions. So I decided to organize a special gathering, a day where we could reconnect, share stories, and simply be present with each other. It wasn't about fancy plans or expensive gifts. It was about creating a space for love and laughter to flow naturally. I wanted to remind my family that no matter how busy life gets, we're stronger when we stand together. I poured my heart into planning this day. I spent nights dreaming up little touches, handmade decorations, favorite snacks, and activities that everyone could enjoy. I wanted to make it perfect, not because I thought it had to be flawless, but because I truly believed in the power of these moments. I was excited, imagining the smiles, the hugs, the stories that would fill the room. I hoped this would be the start of something new, a fresh chapter where we could reconnect deeply and rebuild what time had worn thin. But I also noticed that some family members seemed less enthusiastic, maybe unsure if this was worth the effort, or perhaps just tired of trying. Still, I held on to my hope, convinced that love could bridge even the widest gaps. And so, I invite you to stay with me on this journey. If you've ever felt like your efforts to bring people together weren't enough, or if you believe in the small acts that can transform lives, I'd love for you to join me. Please like this story if it resonates with you. Subscribe if you want to see how everything unfolds, and let's walk through this experience together. Because sometimes it's the quiet acts of love, small, genuine, heartfelt, that make the biggest difference. And I genuinely want to share this story with you. At first, I clung to the hope that everything would fall into place, that my little efforts would finally be appreciated. I spent hours planning that family gathering, making sure every detail was perfect, imagining the warmth and connection we'd share. But as the days went by, a strange chill started to settle in. I noticed little things, subtle shifts that somehow cut deeper than words. Family members would make side plans without even pretending to include me, whispering or giggling when I approached, as if I wasn't even there. I'd try to share my ideas, my excitement about the gifts I'd made, but their eyes would glaze over or change the subject abruptly, as if my voice didn't matter. It was the small, almost imperceptible moments that hurt the most. A comment here, a sarcastic smile there. Things I didn't want to see but couldn't ignore. Someone would mock the amount of effort I'd put into my homemade presents, as if my sincere gestures were a joke, an embarrassment. And I'd feel that familiar sting, the ache of being dismissed, of being invisible. I kept telling myself to stay hopeful, to hold on to the belief that maybe they just didn't understand, that they'd see my sincerity eventually. But inside, a quiet voice kept whispering that maybe I had been foolish to think I belonged. I started questioning myself more and more. Why did my efforts seem so meaningless to them? Was it because I wasn't enough? Because I was trying too hard or not enough? Sometimes I'd catch myself wondering if I'd overstepped somehow, if my desire to connect had pushed me into an uncomfortable zone. I fought to suppress the sadness that crept in during those moments, trying to remind myself that love was in the small things, that maybe they just didn't know how to show it. But the truth hung heavy in my chest. I was beginning to feel like an outsider, an afterthought in my own family. There was a growing sense of betrayal too. I believed that my effort might bring us closer, that maybe this was the start of something real. But instead, I was met with silence or dismissive smiles. Every little gesture I made, every word I shared, seemed to fall flat or be ignored. I kept waiting for a sign that they cared, that they saw my love behind the gifts, but it never came. Instead, I felt more alone with each passing day, as if I'd been caught in a room full of strangers who didn't want me there. The ache of rejection burrowed deeper, and I couldn't help but wonder if I'd made a terrible mistake, if my hope had only set me up for more pain. And yet, deep inside, I still clung to that fragile thread of belief that someday, somehow they might see me for who I really am. But the distance was growing, and I could feel it pulling us further apart, leaving me to wonder if I'd ever truly belong. I never imagined that I would find myself here, caught in a moment of pure, devastating clarity. It happened so quietly, almost by accident. I was in the kitchen trying to finish wrapping a gift I'd made with so much love, when I noticed my phone blinking with a new message. It was from my sister-in-law, and I almost didn't look at it. But something made me glance over, and what I saw froze me in place. There, in plain sight, was a conversation, an exchange of words I never expected to see from her. She was talking to my brother, and the tone of the messages was casual, light, as if I wasn't even part of the plan. They were discussing the upcoming trip, the one I had been looking forward to with so much hope. But what struck me like a punch to the stomach was the way they talked about it, as if I didn't matter. As if I was an afterthought, or worse, something to be left out, forgotten. My heart sank so hard I thought it might stop. My hands trembled uncontrollably as I scrolled through the messages, each word a dagger. They'd planned everything without me, discussed the best times to leave, the places they'd visit, even the things they'd do without even a whisper of my name. It was right there in black and white, the cruel truth laid bare. They had been laughing about how I'd be left behind, how I probably wouldn't even notice. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. My mind tried to deny it, to tell myself that maybe it was a mistake, that I'd misunderstood. But the words were clear. They knew I was there and they didn't care. A cold wave washed over me. My chest tightened, and I felt tears prick at the corners of my eyes, threatening to spill over. I couldn't breathe properly, as if the air had been stolen from my lungs. My stomach turned and I felt a wave of nausea rise up. I was so overwhelmed that I couldn't move, couldn't speak. All I could do was stare at that screen, feeling the weight of betrayal crushing down on me, heavy and unrelenting. The room around me seemed to darken, the noise fading into a distant hum as I sank into a quiet fog of shock and despair. Without a word, I backed away from the table, my legs shaky. I didn't want to confront anyone, not yet. I just needed to be alone, to process this terrible truth in silence. My mind spun with questions I couldn't answer, memories of all the moments I had hoped would bring us closer, now tainted by this betrayal. The hope I'd clung to so tightly crumbled instantly, shattered by the cruel reality that I had been deliberately pushed out, erased from their plans. It was as if I had been invisible all along, and now I knew the truth. The pain of it was almost unbearable. I had believed so much in kindness, in love, in family. Yet all I had was this bitter reminder that sometimes, the ones we trust the most can be the ones who hurt us the deepest. And as I stood there, trembling and overwhelmed, I realized that my hope had been a fragile illusion all along. The trust one had so carefully nurtured was gone, replaced by a hollow ache that would stay with me for a long, long time. As I stood there in the quiet of the kitchen, the weight of betrayal pressed heavily on my chest, but somehow I knew I couldn't let it crush me. My breath was shallow at first, trembling with the shock and the ache of knowing I'd been so easily dismissed, so completely ignored. But then slowly I paused. I took a deep breath, feeling the air fill my lungs, calming the storm inside. With each inhale, I felt a flicker of clarity ignite within me, a small but resolute spark that refused to be smothered by pain. I realized that I could no longer afford to chase after their validation, their approval, or even their acknowledgement. No matter how much I wanted to be seen, to be loved for who I am, I had to understand that waiting for that from them was only draining my strength. I had to protect what little dignity I had left, and that meant no more begging for scraps of affection or understanding. From this moment on, I would stand on my own, quietly and firmly. I would no longer be a victim of their neglect or mockery. Instead, I would become the architect of my own future, one built on my terms and my own worth. A cool sense of resolve washed over me as I silently made my decision. I would take control. I would plan my next steps with precision and calmness. I knew I had to reclaim my independence, to create a space where I could thrive without their shadows looming over me. I thought about canceling the trip, the one I'd hoped would be a moment of joy, now just a reminder of how I'd been excluded. I would handle my finances differently, ensuring that I had the means to stand alone if I needed to. I would find ways to detach quietly without drama or anger, just the steady shift of a person reclaiming her life piece by piece. And with each small internal decision, I felt a little stronger, a little more in control. This wasn't about revenge or bitterness. It was about dignity. It was about respecting myself enough to turn my pain into power, to transform silence into action. I could feel the quiet strength building within me, ready to surface when the time was right. I knew something big was waiting just beneath the surface, something that would change everything. But for now, I would keep this resolve locked inside, steady and calm, preparing myself for what was coming next. There's a new energy emerging from this silence, a calm determination that feels almost like peace. I can't see the full picture yet, but I know I am no longer an outsider in my own life. I am the one steering now, and that realization is both terrifying and freeing. I don't need their approval to move forward. I only need to trust myself and take the next step. Quietly, confidently, with the unwavering belief that I am capable of shaping my own future, no matter how much they try to keep me in the shadows. This is the moment I reclaim my power, and I am ready to see where it will lead. I took a deep breath as I moved through the quiet of my house, feeling a sense of calm I hadn't allowed myself in a long time. The decision was made. Now it was time to act without fanfare or drama. I started by quietly canceling the trip I had planned for everyone, knowing that reclaiming that part of my life was essential. The papers were already in my hand. Confirmation emails, receipts, ready to be shredded, discarded, or stored away. I didn't want to make a scene, just to remove the illusion of control they thought they held over me. With practiced detachment, I gathered my personal belongings, things that had once been shared or left behind in the chaos of their neglect, and carefully separated them from what belonged to me. I folded my clothes, sorted through keepsakes, and tucked away my favorite books and jewelry, feeling the weight of each small action. It was as if I was silently asserting my independence with every item I moved, quietly reclaiming my space, my identity. No shouting, no accusations, just a steady, deliberate shift that no one else noticed. As I worked through these steps, I felt a wave of relief washing over me. There was no anger clouding my focus, only a deep sense of clarity and purpose. The house around me remained oblivious to the quiet revolution happening within its walls. My family was still laughing and chatting, unaware that their world was subtly shifting, that the foundation of my quiet resolve was solidifying beneath their notice. I moved with a calm confidence, knowing that these small acts, these silent steps, were building the life I wanted, one rooted in my own strength and choices. Every drawer I emptied, every document I tucked away, was a brick in the new foundation I was constructing. I felt the freedom in these acts, in knowing that I was no longer waiting for their approval or validation. This was my time to shape my future on my terms. I kept my emotions in check, not because I was cold, but because I understood that true power lies in control over oneself. The quietness of my actions contrasted sharply with the noise of their day-to-day lives, yet it carried the weight of a profound transformation. I was creating space for my growth, my independence, my peace. Each step felt like a small victory, a deliberate move forward. I didn't need their acknowledgement. I only needed to know that I was taking back what was always mine. As I finished, I looked around my home one last time, not with sadness but with quiet satisfaction. This was only the beginning, and I knew that from now on, every step I took would be guided by this newfound strength. The world outside might be unaware of my silent rebellion, but inside I felt a remarkable, unstoppable sense of liberation. I knew I had made my choice, and now it was time to act quietly and deliberately. No dramatic confrontations, no loud declarations, just small, decisive steps that would reclaim my life piece by piece. I started by canceling the trip I had organized and paid for, feeling a strange sense of relief as I disconnected from the plans that no longer reflected who I was or what I needed. It was simple, almost invisible to anyone else, but to me it was a powerful act of asserting my independence. I didn't seek validation or explanation. I simply made the call and moved on, knowing that I was no longer bound by their expectations. Next, I gathered my important documents, my personal identification, bank statements, some savings, and carefully tucked them into a small bag I kept for moments like these. I wanted to hold on to control over my finances and my future, even if it meant doing so in silence. I knew that owning my own resources was the foundation for the freedom I craved. I also collected a few of my belongings, clothes, keepsakes, things that belonged to me, and quietly packed them away, separating them from the clutter of the shared space. It was not about confrontation or anger. It was simply about reclaiming my space, my identity, my voice. As I moved through each step, I felt a steady calm settle over me. There was no rush, no panic, only a quiet certainty that this was the right path. My hands worked efficiently, knowing that each small action was building towards something greater. I could hear the distant hum of their conversations, oblivious to the fact that everything around them was shifting. This silence, this calculated stillness, felt empowering rather than lonely. It was a way of anchoring myself, of reminding my heart that I was capable of steering my own course. With every item I packed away, I felt lighter, as if unburdened by invisible chains. The act of separation was almost meditative. It reinforced my resolve and reaffirmed my independence. I didn't need the chaos of explanation or the approval of others. I only needed to trust myself and keep moving forward, quietly building the life I deserved. As I closed the last box, I realized that each step had strengthened my inner core, transforming my sense of possibility into a tangible reality. The world outside might remain unaware of my silent revolution, but inside I was already free. They tried to come back, of course they did. One by one, their voices slipping into apologies that sounded hollow and rehearsed, as if the words alone could undo what had already been broken. They offered shallow excuses, desperate to regain what they lost: your trust, your presence, your silence. I listened, not out of obligation, but with a calm that surprised even myself. Their words bounced off my armor of resolve, and I saw right through the manipulation, the guilt trips disguised as concern. For the first time, I truly understood that their pleas weren't about me. They were about saving their own egos, their own comfort, as if I were a prize to be won back with empty promises and hollow remorse. They begged, pleaded, trying to paint me as selfish, as if their betrayal was just a small mistake they now regretted. But I felt nothing. No guilt, no remorse, no desire to return to the way things once were. I had already reclaimed myself, and I knew that going back would only mean surrendering that hard-earned strength. Their words, their tears, even their desperation, all faded into the background of my mind. I saw their tactics for what they were: desperate attempts to manipulate the situation, to twist my resolve into guilt and doubt. But I stood firm. I didn't need to speak much. My silence was louder than any words could be. In that silence, I made my decision clear. I looked at them, not with anger, but with a sense of peace, an unwavering certainty that I had moved beyond their reach. I had built a life on my own terms, and no amount of guilt or pleading could take that away from me now. I turned away from their pleas, knowing that I was no longer the person they once took for granted. I was stronger, more aware. I had faced the truth and accepted it. I didn't need their approval or validation. My worth wasn't defined by their opinions or their attempts at control. There was a quiet sadness in witnessing their desperation, a fleeting thought of what might have been if things had been different. But that sadness was distant, detached from my present. I felt no regret for choosing myself, for walking away from their manipulations. I knew I had done what I needed to do: protect my integrity, my dignity, my peace. I was finally in control, and it felt right, freeing. Their efforts to pull me back were futile. I had already stepped forward, leaving behind the shadows of their influence. I am here now, unshaken, resolute, and more certain than ever that I will never go back to being anyone's fallback or afterthought. I am enough. I am free. And nothing they say or do can change that. Now I wake up each morning with a sense of quiet anticipation, not because I'm waiting for approval or validation from anyone, but because I've learned to enjoy my own company. My days are no longer dictated by other people's expectations or the fear of disappointing them. Instead, I create a routine that centers around me, small, meaningful activities that bring me genuine joy. I start my mornings with a cup of tea, savoring the warmth and silence, feeling grateful for this simple moment of peace. I've taken to tidying my home, transforming it into a space that reflects my taste and personality, a sanctuary where I feel truly at ease. Organizing my belongings, hanging pictures that make me smile, lighting candles. These acts, once trivial, now remind me of my strength and my ability to nurture my environment. Taking care of my body and mind has become a daily act of love. I go for walks in the fresh air, feeling the sun on my skin and listening to the sounds of the world around me. I read books that inspire me, not because I need to escape, but because I want to nourish my thoughts. I've started practicing simple meditation, not to meditate for hours, but to anchor myself in the present, to remember that I am enough exactly as I am. These moments, small as they may seem, fill me with a sense of purpose and calm that I hadn't known in a long time. There's a lightness inside me now, a feeling of freedom I never thought I'd reclaim. I no longer carry the weight of trying to please others or prove myself. Instead, I celebrate the fact that I am my own person, capable of making decisions that honor my truth. I make plans, sometimes spontaneous, sometimes deliberate, and I follow through with a confidence that surprises even me. Whether it's trying a new recipe, taking a different route on my walk, or simply allowing myself to rest without guilt, each small victory reinforces my independence. There's a peaceful pride that settles over me, a quiet awareness of how far I've come. I no longer look back with longing or resentment, only with gratitude for the clarity I've gained. I've learned to cherish my own company, to find joy in the little things that I now own outright. My choices, my space, my time. This life I am building is rooted in dignity and self-respect. A life where I decide what is best for me without hesitation or second-guessing. I feel stronger every day, not because I am trying to prove anything to anyone, but because I know deep in my core that I am enough. And that realization fills me with a quiet, steady hope for whatever lies ahead. Since I started to embrace my new life, I've found myself curious about things I never allowed myself to explore before. I've discovered a love for gardening, for instance. There's a quiet joy in tending to my small balcony garden, watching tiny sprouts push through the soil, feeling the sun on my face as I water each plant. It's simple, but it's become a daily reminder that growth takes patience and care, qualities I now carry with me in every part of my life. I've also started painting again, not with the hope of selling or impressing anyone, but just to express what I feel inside. The colors, the strokes, they're like a silent conversation with myself, a way to process the emotions I've carried for so long. It's liberating to create without judgment, to simply enjoy the act of making. I've been fortunate to reconnect with some inspiring people, friends who lift me up, who see me beyond my past struggles. Their kindness feels genuine, and I realize how much I craved authentic connection. I no longer seek approval from people who drain me or dismiss my worth. Instead, I surround myself with those who respect my boundaries and celebrate my small victories. We share quiet mornings over coffee, spontaneous walks, or simply sitting together in comfortable silence. These moments remind me that I'm capable of forming healthy, supportive relationships that nourish my spirit. Everyday pleasures have taken on a new significance. I find joy in the ordinary, sipping a cup of tea while listening to the rain, reading a good book under a blanket, or simply taking a walk without a particular destination. I used to think happiness had to be loud or grand, but now I see its beauty in the subtle, in the pauses between moments. I've learned to savor the quiet, to appreciate the stillness that fills my days. It's in these small, peaceful routines that I find the most profound sense of fulfillment. I no longer see myself through the lens of past pain or limitations. Instead, I recognize myself as someone whole, someone capable of shaping her future based on her own desires. I feel a gentle confidence growing inside me, the kind that's rooted in knowing I'm enough just as I am. Every step I take feels like a declaration of my independence, not just from the struggles I've faced, but from any doubt about my worth. I'm building something real now, more than just survival. I'm creating a life that feels authentic and true to who I am. There's still so much I want to explore, so many dreams I've only begun to whisper to myself. I don't have everything figured out, and I've learned to be okay with that. What matters is that I wake up each day with hope, curiosity, and a sense that I am deserving of happiness, not because I've overcome everything, but simply because I exist. This new chapter is vibrant and full of gentle promise, and I am grateful for every small step that brought me here. I know I'm only just beginning to see how beautiful my life can become when I allow myself to dream freely and live with an open heart. Looking back on everything I've been through, I feel a deep sense of peace settling within me. I remember the girl I once was, full of doubts, shadows of insecurity, desperately trying to find her place in a world that often felt too loud, too harsh. I remember the moments of frustration when my homemade gifts were laughed at, when my dreams seemed so small and insignificant in the face of others' opinions. But I also remember the courage it took to keep going, to believe in myself even when no one else did. That courage was my quiet strength, the seed that slowly grew into the confidence I carry today. There's no room in my heart for resentment anymore. Only gratitude. Gratitude for the lessons learned, for the times I fell and had to pick myself up, for the moments of silence that taught me patience and self-love. I've come to understand that every challenge was a gift in disguise, shaping me into the woman I am now, strong, independent, and full of hope. I no longer see those past struggles as obstacles, but as stepping stones that led me to this place of clarity and inner peace. Now I stand here with an open heart, ready for whatever comes next. I see my future not as a distant, uncertain horizon, but as a space filled with endless possibilities. I dream of new projects, of sharing my art with more people, of creating things that bring joy and meaning, not just for myself but for others. I feel a deep excitement, a gentle anticipation for the days ahead, knowing that I am capable of shaping my life with love and intention. Every new dawn feels like an invitation, an opportunity to learn, to grow, to embrace the beauty in everyday moments. I've learned that happiness isn't something to chase outside of myself. It's something I carry within, blooming with every act of kindness I give myself and others. This story isn't finished. It's simply a new chapter, one where I continue to discover who I am and who I want to become. I believe that my best days are still ahead of me, and I'm eager to see what adventures await. I hold on to the hope that my journey can inspire others too, that sharing my truth might help someone else realize their worth and find the courage to follow their dreams. Because at the end of the day, we're all capable of transforming doubt into strength, fear into freedom, and silence into a song of self-love. If my story has touched your heart, I invite you to leave a like, to subscribe if you want to hear more stories like this, and perhaps support through the Super Thanks feature. Your support means everything to me and helps keep this space filled with honesty, growth, and inspiration. Remember, no matter where you are or what you're facing, your story is still unfolding. There is so much light ahead, so many new beginnings waiting just beyond the horizon. Keep your heart open, stay kind to yourself, and trust that your journey is uniquely yours. The best is yet to come.